Hey. Toda. And thank you for being here. Thank you to Vegan Friendly for bringing me here. Thank you for Vegan Healthy. Thank you for Vegan Loving. Thank you for Vegan Amazing. Thank you for Vegan Awesome. I'd like to start this presentation with an apology. And I'd like to apologize on behalf of every doctor you ever saw who tried to figure out what was wrong with you and make recommendations without ever asking you what you eat. This is a glaring, appalling, embarrassing feature of modern medicine, certainly rampant in American medicine. And I imagine Israeli medicine is similar, though I have great respect for Israeli physicians. You guys are smart and are leaders in your field in so many dimensions. But I have a feeling that nutrition is not high in the priority during medical education in Israel either. Could I have my presenter view here? Yeah, okay. So it's like what I wish I had learned in medical school about nutrition, because it's the key to understanding health, it's the understanding of disease, if not. And not the key to understanding MacBook Pros and presenter mode, but we're trying to get there. Doesn't matter. On we go. So I've been a physician for 47 years. I became vegan in 1981, 38 years ago, because back then there was no vegan friendly. People weren't very friendly to vegans at all back then. Still aren't in many places. But there was the human body that needs to run on plants. There were the animals, and there was the truth. And those three left me no choice but to become vegan, because I had to look myself in the mirror every morning, and I grew up on my uncle's dairy farm in Wisconsin, and I know the cruelty involved in putting meat and dairy on the table. And there was no place else to go but a life of harmlessness and benevolence, and that leads you to being vegan. But after these 47 years in medicine, I realized that to practice medicine without taking into account what our patients are eating is trying to drive a car with 3 wheels, 2 wheels. It doesn't go. So I'm spending the rest of my medical career working for our nonprofit initiative called Moving Medicine Forward. And I'm going around to the medical schools, and I'm talking to the medical students before pharmacosclerosis sets into their brains, and where they think that a drug is the cause and treatment for all maladies. And I'm delivering a simple message, and it's here. So I tell these young first, second, third, fourth year medical students, listen, you are learning how to diagnose and treat all sorts of weird and wonderful diseases, from smallpox to leprosy. But when you open that door in your general practice waiting room, you open the waiting room door in the emergency department, in the surgical outpatient clinic, you're not going to be seeing people with smallpox and leprosy. What you're going to be seeing is a large group of people with a small group of grim diseases, like these. Their arteries are all clogged up with atherosclerotic plaques. Their blood pressure is up. Their lipids are over the moon. their insulin receptors all clogged up with fat, so they've got type 2 diabetes. More and more of them have this dreadful, frightening dementia of Alzheimer's, rampant in this country, I know, and inflammation of every tissue in their body. Their lungs are asthmatic, their joints are inflamed. This is modern Western medicine in the 21st century. Israel has its own particular varieties. Main causes of death, as in America, are clogged arteries of the heart. Alzheimer's is very rampant here. So is stroke. So cancers of the lung from smoking and of the colon, largely from packing that colon full of meat 2-3 times a day. I'll be telling you more about that. Cancer of the breast, often related to dairy consumption among women. All the cows are pregnant and the milk is full of estrogens and stimulates the breast tissue and sets them up for breast lumps and breast cancers. Common diseases, slightly different causes here. The main causes are cancers, the lung and colon, and artery disease leading to heart attacks, strokes, and Alzheimer's. And so the main causes are cigarette smoking and what Israeli people are eating. When the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation looks at the actual causes, it comes out, of course, high blood sugar is tied in with diabetes, tobacco, and these are all food-related. High body mass index, high blood pressure, this is eating too much fat and salt, this is just eating too much. This is the dietary risks, whatever they are, you can bet it has to do with meat, dairy, oils, and flour products. Air pollution is hard on the lungs. And when you see kidney function, this is also a dietary disease. The two main toxins to the kidneys are high-protein diets. High-protein diets are toxic to the kidneys. Those amino acids slam into the filter units, the glomeruli, and damage them. And our He-Man paleo friends are going to learn this one the hard way. And the kidney is very well supplied with blood vessels from the big renal artery that goes into the kidney to the myriad branches of the blood vessels within the arteries, within the kidney. Well, those arteries clog up with atherosclerosis as well. So the failing kidney has damaged glomeruli from too much protein and clogged up arteries from too much atherosclerotic damage, both dietary diseases. And then the fearsome Alzheimer's disease that everybody is afraid of. So many of the factors, when you actually look at what causes them, you see, again, the brains of people with Alzheimer's the arteries are all caked up with atherosclerotic plaques. It's largely a blood vessel disease. And when you look at what those people are eating, they have diets high in saturated fats, cholesterol. Oxidative stress comes from cooked animal proteins, air pollution, etc. Too much sugar in the diet creates oxidizing substances as well. The fat makes these people insulin resistant by clogging up the insulin receptors and the enzymes that handle sugars in the cells. Inflammation is rampant throughout the bodies of everyone suffering most of these diseases, but certainly in the Alzheimer's folks. They have excess levels of copper, mercury, lead, and cadmium in their tissues. These are found in meat products. Lack of folate to help their brain nerve tissue function. The problem is that meat has no folate in it, where plants have plenty of it. And there's inflammation due to these advanced glycation end products. And I'll tell you what those are in a minute, but when people eat sugars, the sugars stick to the proteins, the body heat oxidizes them into these nasty oxidation products called AGEs, or advanced glycation end products. The brains of Alzheimer people are filled with these advanced glycation end products. There's this amazing membrane, the blood-brain barrier, that keeps a lot of evil molecules out of your brain. Well, the Alzheimer folks have damaged that membrane, so a lot of things in their diet winds up going right into their brain tissue and causing damage. So there's many causes to this condition, but so many of them are tied in with meat-based diets. The Israelis boast, I see on the internet, about their the world's healthiest diet. We can discuss that over a cup of tea, but there's no question that meat consumption here is world class. The Israelis rank fifth in meat consumption in the world. They eat 80.3 kilograms per person per year. That's 176 pounds. They average about a half a pound a day. And chicken seems to be by far the meat of choice. You can see meat consumption in Israel since the 60s here. Beef consumption, slight uptick. You eat about 30 kilograms a year. But here's poultry consumption that's really taken a skyrocket since the mid-90s. Israelis now produce 300,000 tons of chicken every year and 100,000 tons of turkeys. When you do the mathematics, those are hundreds and hundreds of millions of these lovely creatures wind up on tables in this country. So let's talk about some nutritional realities. I wish somebody had told me this in medical school. It would have changed every diagnosis I made. It would change every treatment plan that I recommended. It's so important. And it's a basic truth that I'm going around telling the young medical students now. The difference between plant-based diets and animal-based diets, the many, many fundamental differences. I tell them if you were to eat a whole food plant-based meal, if you were to have a nice big salad, a hearty bowl of vegetable bean soup, and these are quinoa and zucchini boats and nice steamed green yellow vegetables, you eat a meal like this. And if an hour later I were to sneak up on you with a needle and a syringe in my hand, and when you weren't looking, I drew 5 cc's of blood into a glass tube and let it sit there for an hour, spun it down into a centrifuge, this is what it would look like. The red clot goes to the bottom, the liquid part of the blood, the serum, rises up to the top. And the serum is crystal clear. You can read newsprint through normal serum. This is what your blood should look like after you eat a healthy, vegan, plant-based meal without a lot of processed junk in it, real food that grew out of the ground. This is what your blood looks like, as every gorilla's blood, every antelope's blood looks like after they eat their meals as well. Your blood should be nice and clear. But you eat a standard Western diet. You eat a meal, you have a bunch of eggs for breakfast, a big piece of pizza for lunch, burgers, fries, and a shake, a steak for dinner, chicken for dinner, all the saturated fat in the burger, the butter fat in the cheese, the egg yolk in the mayonnaise, the vegetable oil in the fries, the dairy fat in the milkshake. All this fat oozes out into the blood. And for the next 5 hours, your blood looks like this. This creamy appearance here, this is called lipemia, and the word means fat in the blood. That's what it means. Now, not everybody shows it this optically densely, but everybody has a wave of fat that goes through your bloodstream after you eat a fatty meal. How could you not? Where is it going to go? Of course, everybody's blood turns fatty after you eat a fatty meal. And I was serious about that 5-hour number. Here's Kuo's classic study. They gave someone a fatty meal at hour 0, and once an hour they drew 5 cc's of blood and put those for 6 hours. And they put those 6 blood tubes, one after another, into an instrument, a spectrophotometer, that measures how milky the blood is looking, how fatty it's getting. And you can see the blood getting fattier and fattier and fattier and fattier. It takes the liver a good 5 hours to begin to clear the fat out of the blood. Well, think of what that means in relation to how most Westerners, I don't know if all Israelis do this, but certainly most Americans certainly do, how they conduct their eating day. They start their morning off with something fatty, that turns their blood fatty, and for the next 5 hours, their blood is running thick with fat. And during that time, the inner lining of the artery walls, the endothelial lining, is getting inflamed and made more permeable. The fat sticks to their fat stores in their belly, and they wind up more obese. The fat works its way into their muscle cells, their liver cells, clogs up their insulin receptor function, and they get more insulin resistant. And saturated fats, contrary to what the paleo folks are peddling, the saturated fats are good for you. Saturated fats set off inflammation. They are pro-inflammatory fats. And you send a big surge of saturated fat through your tissue. It ticks up your inflammatory reactions all over the body. This happens for a good 5 hours. It takes the liver till almost 6 hours, till almost lunchtime, to clear the breakfast fat out of the blood, just in time for lunch, and send another wave of fat through the bloodstream. And all afternoon, the artery walls are getting injured, and the fat stores in the belly are increasing, and the insulin receptors are clogging up, and inflammation's getting promoted. Takes the liver till about dinner time to clear the lunchtime fat out of the bloodstream. When time for dinner, and another wave of chicken fat goes to the bloodstream, or cow fat, or and other types of animal fat, no pig fat here, goes through the bloodstream. And the blood stays fatty all evening till it's time for dinner. Till it's time for dessert. And another wave of fat goes to the bloodstream on the way back to the bedroom. And the reality is that most people eating the Western diet are keeping their blood fatty all day. Stuff never clears out of the bloodstream. You keep your blood fatty for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Can't be surprised when some adverse changes start happening in your body. I will show you them in a minute. But lest you think, well, I don't eat that much fat, and I'm pretty lean. Fat's not the problem. What I make very clear to the young medical students is that there's a lot more than fat in that blood. There is an evil brew of molecules that cause damage throughout the body. This is generally a high-salt diet, a high-sodium diet. The falafels and the hummus carry a good sodium charge. Certainly the cheese on the pizza and the French fries and all the snacks you find at the convenience stores are full of salt. The salt stiffens your artery walls, makes you retain fluid. That raises your blood pressure, which sets you up for strokes. But we're also finding out that the sodium in the salt is not benign stuff. It turns out it turns on lymphocytes that trigger autoimmune diseases like lupus and ankylosing spondylitis. High salt diets just are not healthy, and the standard Western diet is certainly full of that. Then we come to all the sugar that is found in the Western diet. Now let me make something clear here. We all love sweet foods. And it's okay to entertain the sweet taste buds on your tongue. Generally, the thing to tell you, of course, is that that's what fruit is for. Nature made it very easy to find. It's colorful. It hangs from trees, usually within reach. You can usually find it without a problem. But I don't have any problem with a half a teaspoon of sugar in your tea, because that's using sugar as it was meant to be used. It's a flavoring. It's a sweet flavoring. And a half teaspoon of sugar is not going to cause anybody any problem. What my advice to avoid is avoid eating sugar as a food. And that's what you're doing when you eat a cookie. Whoops, sorry. Getting used to the controls here. When you eat this cookie, you are eating a chunk of sugar as food. When you're eating a piece of cake, you're eating sugar as a food. You're eating sugar as a food. There's donut or sugar as a food. Here you are drinking sugar food. You are flooding your tissues with hundreds of grams of sugar. This is toxic. How? Why? Because you know if you spill some syrup on the table, everything gets sticky. Well, the same thing happens in your body. Sugar sticks to proteins, and it sticks to proteins all over the body. We say it glycosylates the proteins. That's not a good thing in view of an important piece of chemistry called the Maillard reaction. What's that? Well, this is what makes bread brown. How do you make, what makes this happen? The issue is combining sugar with protein and then heating it up. It happens in the bakery. The sugar is the pastry flour, the protein's the gluten, and they mix them together, put them in the oven, and the Maillard reaction turns the bread brown, turns the cookies nice and solid and brown. Wonderful thing to do on a French baguette. You don't want to run the Maillard reaction in your body. When you drink that cola, when you eat that candy bar, when you eat that donut, that cake, that sugar as a food, the sugar floods through your tissues and it sticks to proteins all over your body. Sticks to your hemoglobin, sticks to your collagen, sticks to your myoglobin, your muscles. It glycosylates proteins all over your body. And your body heat does what the baker's oven does, and it turns the Maillard reaction on. And you wind up creating this oxidized, bastardized, sugared protein mass that just looks, well, it looks like bread crust under the microscope. And the chemists call this result, they call them advanced glycation end products, or AG. Don't worry about the name so much, but the initial is AGE. It ages you is the problem. You don't want to run the Maillard reaction in the lens of your eye. It will set you up for cataracts. You don't want to run the Maillard reaction in the elastic fibers of your skin. It breaks them and makes your skin wrinkle. You don't want to run the Maillard reaction in the capillaries in your brain. This is the membrane that oxygen has to get across to fuel your nerve cells. This is a good way to set yourself up for Alzheimer's dementia. Eating sugar as a food ages you, and that should be one of the take-homes from this talk. And if you need a little visual reminder that eating sugar as a food ages you, here is a lovely young woman about to do that act. She is about to eat a chunk of sugar as a food. She does so, and 6 months later, eating sugar as a food ages you. It's a flavoring. Don't eat it as a food. Which brings us around to our beloved vegan junk food. And you don't want to eat much of this stuff either. Now, I'm not totally against, veggie burgers and vegan hot dogs and all these things, especially if it helps our meat-eating friends transition to truly vegan diets. If the veggie burgers and the veggie dogs and the veggie everything helps them do that, wonderful. That's really their highest use. And for the rest of us who are already vegan, if once a month, twice a month, you want to treat yourself to a vegan pizza or a vegan veggie, fine. But don't be eating this stuff many times during the week. It's highly processed food and ultimately isn't the best for you. Now, here's when I'm speaking to the medical students and to the medical residents. I get real with them about what the standard meat-based diet does. They go, oh, you need meat for protein. That's the end of their thinking about it. And I say, no, doctors, here's the reality of what meat in the diet really does. And you need to know this, especially those who are promoting paleo diets and keto diets and other diets based on animal flesh. Here's the reality of what that does in the human body. First of all, nobody eats raw meat outside of the steak tartare fans. All meat is cooked, and the very act of cooking animal muscle oxidizes the cholesterol in every cell of the meat. And oxidized cholesterol is highly atherogenic. It sets off atherosclerotic plaques. Here you see oxidized LDL for a reason. And every chicken breast that people eat, every steak that people put in their mouths is full of oxidized cholesterol. And this is the raw material for atherosclerotic clogging of the arteries, especially if the inner lining, the endothelial lining, has been ripped up by the saturated fats and the phosphoric acid in the cola drinks and the high fructose corn syrup and the candies and all the chemical assault that people inflict upon their arteries on a daily junk food basis. It's easy for these oxidized cholesterol particles to get into the wall of the arteries and begin to set off the process of atherosclerotic plaque formation that eventually sets off the clot that stops the blood flow and causes the heart attack or stroke. So right away, meat would seem to be, if you care about your arteries, not a healthy food to eat. But the very act of cooking animal muscle on that grill, under that broiler, oxidizes the proteins, the nucleic acids, the cell membranes, and that's going to create a whole host of what are called reactive aldehydes. You see their names here, alkylene glyoxal, and these are mutagenic. These damage your genes. These are the genes that make you, that turn enzymes on, turn enzymes off. The last thing you want to do is run a bunch of reactive aldehydes through your tissues after you eat a meat-containing meal, but that's what every omnivore does. Then there's new 5-GC. What is that? This is a sialic acid that only animals make. And plants don't make this stuff, but this is highly inflammatory stuff. This is what it looks like. And this sets off inflammation throughout the body. And if you stain for it, you'll find it in the lesions in coronary arteries and the rheumatoid joints and various autoimmune disease tissues. And again, our paleo friends are giving themselves a shot of new 5-GC 2-3 times a day, and that fans the inflammatory fires throughout their body. Then there's good old endotoxin. What's endotoxin? Endotoxin comes from the slaughterhouse. And this is the only gory one I'll show you. It's not that bad. But the reason why I'm showing you the cutting table in the slaughterhouse is that all meat, kosher meat, organic meat, they all pass through the slaughterhouse. And when the animal is eviscerated, when the guts are taken out, the gut bacteria spill all over the slaughterhouse cutting surfaces. And so on every cutting surface in the slaughterhouse, with a culture tube, you can culture E. coli, Salmonella, Shigella, Enterobacter, Clostridia, this nasty crew of really nasty bacteria. And they are on the surface of every chicken breast, every lamb chop, every piece of steak that comes out of the slaughterhouse. It's on these bacteria are on the surface. It's inevitable. Is then wrapped in cellophane and sent to the supermarket and put in the meat case where the ultraviolet light shines down to kill bacteria, and it does. And when these bacteria die, their cell walls break apart. And that releases this host of nasty lipopolysaccharides called endotoxin. These molecules are bad news. If you want to know what endotoxin does, just take a walk around this daisy of despair. Those medical professionals in the audience will know endotoxic shock that kills people in the intensive care unit. Same stuff. Okay? And endotoxin, you can see it sets off free radicals, it starts making your blood clot, sets off allergic reactions, depresses your heart function, releases histamine, and endotoxin's heat stable. Cooking the burger does not get rid of the endotoxin. And again, our paleo friends and our keto friends are to give themselves a shot of endotoxin 2-3 times a day and sending these reactions off in their body as well. Endotoxin makes your gut leaky. And that allows food proteins passing along your intestine to get out into your bloodstream, flow through joints, kidneys, etc., setting off inflammation, autoimmune diseases. Then there's lovely TMAO that our omnivorous friends have to deal with. What's this? This is an illustrative story. No surprise these days, everybody's aware that the food you eat determines the microbes that live in your gut. You eat a bunch of sugar, you're going to summon up sugar-eating microbes. Well, you eat meat every day. You're eating lots of molecules called carnitine and choline. Well, you keep dropping bolts of carnitine and choline down into your gut, you're going to summon up microbes that eat carnitine and choline. They have names like Clostridia and Peptidropic. They don't care about you. They're just waiting for that next salmon steak, that next chicken breast to come down. And they will take that carnitine and choline and turn it into a molecule called trimethylamine that your liver turns into trimethylamine oxide. This is a molecule from hell. This drives cholesterol into the artery walls and keeps the good HDL from pulling cholesterol out. This is a real accelerant when it comes to creating atherosclerotic plaques in your arteries. And there's already been reports of these young buff paleo guys working out in the gym with their ripped six-packs dropping dead on the treadmill, and when they do autopsies, they find that they were old men on the inside. You're as old as your arteries, and this is a great way to turn yourself into an old man or an old woman. There's already reports in the literature about the fact that our paleo friends have high levels of TMAO in their bloodstream. No surprise. How can it be otherwise? Want to get a quick picture of that one? Go for it. Give you a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. Then there's good old carcinogenic heterocyclic amines. The very act of cooking animal muscle is going to oxidize a whole bunch of proteins, and that's going to create these nasty cancer-causing substances that, as the fecal mass and many of the meat-eating folks, because there's so little fiber in their diet, the fecal masses move so slowly through the gut, and they're all full of these carcinogens that have a long time to rub on the colon wall. And also they will settle in the low part of the stomach as well. But mostly they affect the colon, and they can rub on this for hours and hours, days and days. And again, colorectal cancer is the leading cancer killer in your country, and it's largely a disease of the meat-eating folks. There's good old heme iron. This is one of the bodybuilders, oh, I want that iron for my muscles. Well, iron is an oxidizing agent. If you ever look at the bumper of an old car, you'll see that iron rusts, and iron in your body oxidizes tissues. The problem with heme iron, and that's what makes red meat red, it's the iron that's in the hemoglobin in the muscle. The problem is the body can't keep it out. All the heme iron is immediately absorbed. The iron that's in spinach, the iron that's in kale and greens and dried fruits, that's non-heme iron. The intestinal membrane, the wall of the gut, can keep that iron out. If there's too much already in the body, it can keep non-heme iron out. But heme iron just expresses itself right in. And this is a pro-oxidizing agent that ages you and may be carcinogenic as well. And then the animals, as you well know, in the feedlots are fed bushels of grains every day that are sprayed with herbicides, pesticides, antibiotics, growth promoters. And as the animal feeds us day after day, these nasty chemicals bioaccumulate in the animal's flesh. And when you bite into, or not you, but when the folks eating the chicken bite into that chicken, they're getting all the bioaccumulated pesticides and herbicides and antibiotics. And the water is not clean in the feedlots, and so there's heavy metals, mercury, cadmium, winds up in the chicken flesh, the cow flesh as well as growth-promoting hormones and antibiotics that Bruce already mentioned. Well, I'll just eat fish. Well, we've been treating the oceans like sewers, and now it's come home on the dinner plate, and the fish now are just, when you look at that piece of salmon, you have to wonder how much mercury's in it, how much pesticides and dioxins and microplastics now. And this is the reality of basing your diet on animal flesh. And I ask my colleagues who recommend meat-based diets, does your patient's blood carry these molecules day after day, or doesn't it? I'm telling doctors, you are recommending that your patient, after every meal, keep this array of toxic molecules percolating through all the tissues of their body, their muscles, their brain, their nerves, hour after hour. You think it's a good thing? If your patient's diet is vegan, the answer is no, actually. My patient's tissues do not contain these contaminating, disease-producing molecules. But if you're recommending a meat-based diet, yep, you are recommending. Yep, I want you to tell your patient, I want you to have all these molecules percolating through your tissues hour after hour, day after day, month after month, year after year. I'll remind people that in my country, the Colorado River cut the Grand Canyon day after day after day after day. This is the power of persistence. I have to ask my colleagues who recommend, and the paleo promoters and the keto promoters, eating eggs and meat 3-4 times a day, saying, you recommend this, and after years of this, then you're shocked, doctor, when the tissues become inflamed. Oh, you're surprised when the arteries clog up and they get their stroke. Oh, you're puzzled, doctor, when their joints light up with autoimmune disease from the leaky gut. Oh, you can't imagine, but just bad genetics that colon cancer popped out of your colon wall there, sir. Sorry about that. We'll see. Hopefully it hasn't spread to your liver. We'll see what the surgeon can do for you. This is the gross, outrageous disconnect that modern medicine has perpetrated upon our patients by practicing medicine like what our patients are eating has no effect on these diseases. And to this day, there's still etiology unknown. We don't know what caused these diseases. To them, I say, get serious. That's outrageous. My medical science colleagues can detect a genetic mismatch on gene A21 on chromosome 14 with precision. But the thought that cheeseburgers and pepperoni pizzas might be clogging up our patients' arteries, this is too abstruse a concept for them to understand. Which then brings us around to our colleagues and our patients, and there's no bad guys, they just don't know, they're trapped in ignorance. But the folks who then are following the advice, they should eat like the caveman, which the paleo diet does not do. We live mostly on starches from dug up roots that the women gathered all day. But these folks, as a physician, I have grave concern, pun intended, that these folks are setting themselves up for a plague of colon cancer. Want to cause colon cancer? Pack a colon full of meat 2-3 times a day for 20 years. Watch what that sets off. They're setting themselves up for a plague of colon cancer and heart attacks and strokes and lupus and autoimmune disease and diabetes, Crohn's disease, colitis, and dementia. So I asked to my colleagues when I'm at the medicals, do you know what you're doing when you are promoting these kind of diets? These people really, literally don't know what they're doing. All they see, because these folks initially improve, because they recommend stop eating flour products. Many of them, the paleo folks, say stop eating dairy and oils. And you stop eating dairy and oils and flour products, and you're going to lose weight. Yay. And the weight loss will make your lipids better, make your diabetes control better, and the patient will feel better. And so the practitioners promoting say, see, it's a healthy diet. My patients are getting leaner, they're getting healthier, their lipids are better, their diabetes, it's the best diet. But I tell them, don't be seduced by these early beneficial changes you see. This is just from the weight loss you see. The real issue is what are you really brewing up in this patient's colon? What are you really brewing up in this patient's arteries? What are you brewing up in their breast tissue, their prostate? And what are you brewing up in their brains? Very importantly, to the doctors, because medical care is very episodic. Unless you're the patient's family doctor who's going to follow them throughout their lives. You don't see the same doctor in the clinic. The doctors move away, you move away. And as a result, I remind the young docs, listen, you're not going to be, will you be around in 10 years when this patient passes his first bloody stool from the colon cancer your diet spawned? You won't be around. You won't even see it. You're going to be around in 12 years when this lady's joints light up from that leaky gut inflammatory arthritis that your diet gave her. You won't be around. You'll think you did something good for her. You're going to be around when the first signs of Alzheimer's show up. You won't see it. And I think this is really irresponsible type of nutritional counseling. Do no harm applies to dietary advice as well. And I think people promoting these fad diets are causing great harm to their patients. Their intentions are good, but they know not what they do. Which brings me around to another point. Another issue, the ketosis folks, the ketogenic folks say, oh, it's good to be in ketosis. And it is. You know, back a million years ago on the African savannas, I'm sure there were frequent periods where 5 or 7 days would go by before you found the next berry bush with fruit on it. And these intermittent 5-day fasts were probably the rule. And our body learned how to shift into this fat-burning gear, and these ketone bodies were produced in the body, they're the breakdown products of fats. And it's a good thing, and it cues the body to do all sorts of wonderful conservation mechanisms. We clean up debris in our cells. It rebalances our hormones. It's a good thing to be in ketosis for a few days every month or two. Yay, I'm all for that. But you don't want to stay in ketosis month after month. That's like driving your car in passing gear to Cairo. You're going to burn out the engines. And nobody has ever done these kind of diets. These people are recommending. Nobody's been in ketosis for 5 years, 10 years, which is what they're advocating. This is bizarre. Ketones are acidic. This is a low-grade state of acidosis. This is hard on the bones, hard on the kidneys, hard on the livers. And it's going to start showing up in the medical journals. Nobody has done this before, and they need to be humble enough to realize that. Plant-based diet, just the opposite. If you go around to the blue zones, you'll see people who've been living on basically plant-based diets up to 100 years or more. We know that a whole food plant-based diet will support longevity without a whole lot of disease happening from it. Not so with these animal-based diets. And my noble profession does you a great disservice to practice medicine like what you're eating has no effect on these diseases. So remember, your body is never not looking. You can't tell your body, look over here, I have a cheeseburger down there. Yeah, what was that? I didn't do anything. Yeah. I showed you what happened. Who are you kidding? We need to realize something very important, and I'm not hesitant at all to tell the young doctors, when a patient or any person adopts a plant-based diet, it changes everything. Let's talk about it. It's some basic science that is now glaringly evident. Within minutes of eating anything, molecules of that food are flowing through every cell in your body where your DNA lies unfolded. And the molecules of that mouthful of food wash across your DNA, and they play your DNA like a piano. And they turn genes on, they turn genes off. They turn enzymes on, they shut enzymes down. Every meal changes you on a genetic, molecular level. Our food changes who we are. It changes what genes are working in our body and which ones are inert. Here you see this very clearly. These are biopsies of prostate tissue of men with early stage prostate cancer. And in this left-hand panel, these red patches here, these are oncogenes. These are cancer-promoting genes that are turned on, promoting cell division. The patient went on a whole food plant-based diet for 6 months. They did another biopsy, and this same tissue turned into this. These oncogenes have now been turned off. Our food changes who we are on a genetic molecular level. It turns our genes on and off. Well, that's really important when you consider the food you're eating. You don't need to be a geneticist to understand that the genes that are going to be turned on by this food and all the contaminating inflammatory molecules that it necessarily contains, the genes are going to be turned on by this and the reactions that it's going to create are a fundamentally different set of genes that are going to be turned on by this food. When you eat whole plant foods, you are flooding your tissues with these lovely plant-based phytonutrients that are basically stabilizing antioxidant molecules. They promote tissue repair. It's the difference between 1 and 0 in computer land, whether you're eating a meat-based diet or a plant-based diet. I'm talking about a whole food plant-based, not a junk food vegan diet. But if your food really is out of whole plant foods, you are turning on a whole different set of genes in your DNA, and they are generally beneficial ones. And they promote tissue repair and immunity. People say, I got bad genes. You may have a genetic propensity towards a disease, but whether that disease actually manifests in your body is going to be largely determined by the food you are flowing through those cells. The pithy saying, your genes may load the gun, but your diet and your lifestyle pull the trigger about whether that disease actually manifests in your body. Want to see that one again? All right, you owe me one. Okay. Our food changes who we are. We need to take responsibility for that. It'll change us in two ways, two very powerful ways. It will actually turn genes on and off like the new 5GC turns on inflammation in the body directly, chemically. But also the food changes the microbes in our gut, and they will change you because they are not innocent, inert bystanders. They are actively metabolizing your food, and their byproducts are neurotransmitters. They put out norepinephrine and dopamine and GABA and a whole host of molecules that get into your brain and change your mood, change your thoughts, change your perceptions. Food changes who we are. It really does matter. It matters so much that my friend Baxter Montgomery, cardiologist in Houston, made this little diagram that says from the evil trunk of bad nutrition comes all this evil fruit of heart failure, obesity, headache, hypertension, etc. And this is quite profound, and I've expanded upon it to my medical colleagues, saying, listen, to practice medicine without paying attention to what your patient is eating puts you in the position of the blind man and the elephant. And you all know the fable of the blind man who can find the elephant, and one grabs his tail, the elephant's like a rope, the other grabs his trunk, the elephant's like a snake, one grabs his leg, the elephant's like a tree trunk. They all have hold of the same elephant, but none of them has the faintest idea what a real whole elephant really looks like and what it really is. Well, that's the problem with the medical specialists practicing without an understanding of nutrition. They're sitting in their little cubicles writing their reports, and the cardiologist sees the clogged arteries, and the internist sees the high blood pressure, and the endocrinologist sees the diabetes, and the physiatrist sees the sore joints, and the rheumatologist sees the autoimmune diseases, and the neurologist sees the dementia, and the dermatologist sees the psoriasis, and the gastroenterologist sees the Crohn's disease and the colitis, and the general surgeon sees diverticulitis. Guess what? They're all looking at the same disease. They are all looking at processes driven by inflammation and free radical damages, and they're all looking at the same basic cause. But etiology unknown. We don't know what causes these diseases. And it's a tragedy, because if they just understood this, they could tell the patient to do what would cure their patient right in front of them, and that's to tell their patient to change to a whole food vegan diet. This is no joke. Let me show you how profound this is. And you have an inherent understanding of it, but I tell them, do not underestimate the difference between an animal-based diet and a plant-based diet. By changing from an animal-based diet to a plant-based diet, look at what you're doing. All these disease-producing, inflammation-engendering molecules, gone. You've taken them right out of the tissue. Body just flushes them right out, liver excretes them, they're gone. And instead, you've replaced them with these lovely antioxidant, phytonutrient molecules washing through the tissues with every meal. That creates profound physiological effects. The blood gets less viscous. It flows more freely. That allows oxygen to be delivered better to the cells. These pro-inflammatory fats, the arachidonic acid, they're gone. Instead, you replace them with omega-3 fats that are anti-inflammatory, so you change the fat balance in the tissues. The oxidizing animal fats in the cells, they're gone. The oxidative stress that goes with it are gone. Potassium generally is an anti-inflammatory molecule because it tells the anti-inflammatory atom because it tells the adrenals to put out these anti-inflammatory hormones. It changes the microbes in your gut, and the good guys, the Firmicutes, increase, and the bad guys, the Bacteroides, decrease. Renal function gets better. Gut function gets better. The blood, you need less white blood cells. There's less inflammation. It changes the physiology throughout the body in a beneficial way. So a whole food plant-based diet really is a disease-reversing diet. And I have now seen this hundreds and hundreds of times. You put a person who is all clogged up and obese and inflamed on a whole food vegan diet, and within days, the obesity starts to melt away, the arteries open up, the high blood pressure comes down, the joints stop hurting, the asthmatic lungs stop wheezing so much, the migraine headaches get better, the bowels start working, the psoriatic skin plaques start fading. They turn into normal, healthy people. And every one of us who practices a lifestyle kind of medicine has a stable full of patients like Emily who used to have diabetes, who used to be obese, who used to have high blood pressure. These diseases go away. This is an alien concept to my colleagues, and it shouldn't be. These are reversible diseases. The concept of disease reversal is what I'm trying to drum into their heads, especially the young doctors. These are reversible diseases. You need to know that, and a plant-based diet will reverse them. When I say disease reversal, I'm talking the symptoms go away and the lab values become normal. These are all reversible diseases, every single one of them, and my young docs need to know that, and in our Moving Medicine Forward initiative, this is the message I'm delivering. I was a physician 45 years before anybody put these two words in the same sentence for me. Let me quickly go over a couple of the ways this happens. Certainly happens with inflammatory joint disease. Here's Kelsengrau's classic study, 27 patients with rheumatoid arthritis, put them on a 7-day fast and then a vegan diet for 3.5 months. Within a month, everything got better. The joints got better, their labs got better, and those who maintained the diet were still improved in a year. Asthmatic folks here are wheezing. Dairy protein is just so inflammatory to the lungs. Here's Lindahl's classic study, took 35 patients practicing asthmatics on prednisone and albuterol, put them on a vegan diet, significant decrease in asthma symptoms, 71% better 4 months, 92% at a year, and in almost all cases, medication was withdrawn or drastically reduced. Diabetes, Barnard's classic study about low-fat vegan diets, remediating diabetes. We all have patients like Jim who used to have obesity and diabetes, went on a low-fat vegan diet and is now running marathons and off his insulin, does not have diabetes anymore. Diabetes is a disease of fat toxicity, clogging up your insulin receptors. Stop eating all that fat, including vegetable oils. I'm not a big olive oil fan, not a big vegetable oil fan for a number of reasons, but they interfere with insulin receptor function. Dermatology, acne is classically made worse by dairy protein. The dairy turns on genes in the skin that make for very acidic skin oil and clogs up the glands, and people who go on vegan diets change the genes that are on, and you get patients like the Nelson twins who had dramatic clearing. They had to also get rid of soy protein. Psoriasis commonly gets better on a whole food plant-based diet. And then the biggest killer here, one of the biggest killers, is heart attacks and strokes. And as I mentioned, cooked meat protein is a major player in damaging the artery walls and setting off plaque formation. When one eats a whole food plant-based diet, especially the dark green leafy vegetables, and we're talking, if you've got clogged arteries, you got angina, you got blue legs, you've had a heart attack, you got official coronary artery disease, what you want to do is eat a helping of greens 4 or 5 times a day. Why? Because you keep these wonderful antioxidant molecules in your bloodstream constantly flowing through your bloodstream. What happens is they start seeping into the wall of the artery, and here you have the oxidized cholesterol in these foam cells that set off the plaque formation. Well, the wonderful antioxidants neutralize the free radicals, so these foam cells that came to gobble them up don't have to be there, and they leave. They outmigrate. And as a result, the plaque gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and that magical endothelial lining reestablishes itself, not by magic, but because the bone marrow is constantly putting out showers of stem cells that reupholster the artery walls and heal the artery. And you wind up with pictures like this. This is from Esselson's classic study. And there's a man's left anterior descending artery, These rat-eaten portions here, these are plaques encroaching into the blood flow channel. He had bad angina, went on a whole food plant-based diet. 22 months later, this artery turned into this artery. And same artery, these plaques melt away. It's a reversible disease. And I tell people before you schedule them for a catheterization or for a 4-vessel artery bypass, change this man's diet and you can melt these plaques away from the inside. Doctors need to know this. Patients need to know this. Esselstyn published this study. I thought it would change the course of cardiology. So did Esselstyn. We heard crickets as a response, and it's an embarrassment to my profession that every cardiologist didn't get on the phone and get Dr. Esselstyn on the other end and say, how did you do this? Tell me what I need to do to bring this healing to my patients. Hopefully, as I'm trying to turn on the nutritional light in these med students' heads, they will be open to this. So, our colleagues are tough. They want to see that randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study. Am I running long? 5 minutes. Okay. They're not going to be there. People know what they're eating. You can't do a randomized study. People do change their diet. People will never change. They do. So I say before you order another expensive test or blood test, ask your patient what they eat every day, and you'll get the answer why they're sitting in front of you. I give my patients, I say, even if the doctor doesn't know anything about plant-based nutrition, you at least owe them a 3-page handout on the way out the door. You want to get rid of your diabetes, you want to get rid of your lupus, you want to get rid of your high blood pressure. See these, eat this dietary style, see these videos, read these books, and you'll know what to do. The state of Israel is generally seems to be predisposed to plant-based diets for young folks and older folks. It's not too difficult for anybody to change. Everyone should see movies like Forks Over Knives and go to their website. Their diet is just excellent. And it's the key to not only satisfaction. I'm the happiest doctor I know. My patients get healthy right before my eyes. And I want all my colleagues to experience that. But it's also the key to our survival. When I hear these paleo and keto folks recommending flesh-based diets, oh, everybody ought to be eating paleo, everybody ought to be eating keto, it's the best diet in the world. Are they seriously recommending a flesh-based diet 3 times a day for 8 billion people? That will destroy this planet faster than it's being destroyed. The majority of environmental devastation that we're facing, as Bruce made very clear, is driven by the flesh-based diet that is being produced on industrial levels. It's why the forests are being cut down. It's why the soils are eroding. It's where the water's going. It's why I'm included. You know this list very well. 80 billion animals raised every year is why the ice caps are melting, why the bears are on the icebergs. Well, we can always eat fish. We have strip mined the oceans. We have clear cut the oceans. It's time to let the fish off the hook. It's time to let the oceans heal. We have used fishing up. It's time to let the oceans heal. We've used meat eating up. No matter what role the mighty hunter plays, doesn't matter. We've used it up at this point. We must, as a species, as individuals and as species, evolve our diets to a plant-based one. If you don't know this book, go to the website of Dr. Richard Oppenlander called Comfortably Unaware, which is right where the meat and dairy folks want you, and read his excellent book, see the videos there. It will open your mind to this very important topic. It's time to leave caveman thinking behind, big time. If we do, the world will heal. We'll need less land to feed ourselves, the forests will come back, the greenhouse gases will be absorbed, the soils will stabilize, the rivers will run clean again, the land will become healthy, the people will become healthy. This is happening in my country and around the world. Plant-based nutrition is dawning in the heads of doctors around the globe. Here is Kaiser Permanente promoting plant-based diets to their doctors and patients. Here is UC Davis recommending it. Here's our Rochester Lifestyle Medicine colleagues. Plantrition Project brings plant-based doctors together from around the world to talk about it. I just attended their plant-based conference in Oakland. The American College of Lifestyle Medicine is a very pro-plant message. And we're forming around the world PAN, the Plant-Based Health Professionals, and the Physician Association for Nutrition. The Israeli group has formed here. And if you are a health professional, I urge you to contact PAN in Israel and support them. If you are a health professional, take a picture of this slide. Everything you need to know is in these references. You study these, you will know what to tell your patients as far as healthy plant-based nutrition. Go back to that one. Okay. Okay. Past your bedtime. People are leaving. I got to wrap it up here. Go to PCRM's website and you'll see lots of wonderful evidence-based programs for weight control, diabetes, heart disease, all at the PCRM.org website. Download their app and you will have right on your cell phone all the plant-based nutrition for every disease you run into. This is an exceptionally excellent resource. I highly recommend it when you have a patient with any autoimmune disease, etc. Queue it up and you'll know what to write as far as dietary orders go. So they say once you look behind the curtain, you can't pretend you don't know what's behind the curtain. And that's what I'm trying to do as I go around to the med school with our Moving Medicine Forward initiative. And I asked them a provocative question. I put up this list of diseases that they deal with every day. And I asked them a tough question that gets them where they live, but I have to ask, you want to heal these patients or don't you? Really? Why'd you go into medicine? If you're just going to see them in an outpatient clinic and raise their metformin dosage and raise their statin dosage as they come back in a month and not talk to them about what they're eating, you are enabling their diseases. That is not what a physician do. When you have the power to help these people cure themselves and you withhold this information, you are not fulfilling your ethical duty as a physician. You want to heal these patients. You want to heal these patients, then send them to the plant-based dietitian down the hall. Let her teach them what to eat. Let her take them shopping. Let her show them the video. You see them back in a month and make sure their numbers are better. If not, to call the dietitian and ask why. But there are more and more plant-based dietitians around. Use them. They are the key to making the medical care truly responsive. So, I tell my colleagues the era of applied nutrition-based lifestyle medicine is dawning and plant-based wave is breaking. Become the happiest doc you know. Don't settle for anything less than reversing these diseases. And to all of you, I'll say the vegan era is dawning. And I invite you to become the happiest, healthiest person you know as peace begins on your plate. Bless you all. Thank you for your attention. Make it a vegan world. Thank you, everyone. Toda. Toda.
Thank you so much, Dr. Klepper. תודה רבה לכולכם. יש לך שאלה? אוקיי. נתראה מחר. לילה טוב.